Hello, I'm Matthew Waller and welcome to Verified Live. Straight back to that breaking news that we heard in the last few moments that the head of the Wagner Group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, has just released his first audio message since leading Saturday's revolt. It's an 11-minute audio message. He said the group's members had started what he called a march for justice. We showed no aggression, he said, but added we were hit by missiles and helicopters. He said his supporters turned around to avoid spilling Russian soldiers' blood. Meanwhile, President Vladimir Putin and his government are projecting an impression today of business as usual. We've seen this first footage of Vladimir Putin appearing on Russian television, and we'll return to that thought in a moment or two. But let's head straight to the newsroom. Let's find out more about this audio message. Vitaly Shevchenko is there for us, and he has been monitoring all of that, and a lot of lines just dropping, Vitaly, in the last few minutes. Just take us through it.
Well, this message is entirely retrospective. It's looking back at what Wagner did over the weekend. There's no indication of what Yevgeny Prigozhin's plans are, where he is, and what is going to happen to his Wagner Group. He was very complimentary, boastful, you could say, as usual, about Wagner and what he did. He said repeatedly that it wasn't his intention to topple the government in Russia. He kept saying that his group, during this march for justice, as he calls it, his group did not kill a single Russian soldier on the ground. He expressed regret that his fighters had to open fire on aircraft allegedly targeting Wagner during this march. And he appeared to say that one other reason why Wagner staged this march was to give the official army an example of how things are done. Yevgeny Prigozhin said, well, look, in one day we're able to cover 700 kilometers, and this is the level of organization, he said, that the Russian army needs to learn to match. And concluding his 11-minute message posted on social media, Yevgeny Prigozhin said that this is what the 24th of February 2022 should have looked like. And of course, this is the date when Vladimir Putin launched his special military operation against Ukraine. So Yevgeny Prigozhin appears to be saying that I am the man who can get things done. I am the best person who can secure Russia's victory in Ukraine. But again, he gave absolutely no indication of where he was speaking from or what his plans for the future were.
I'll come back to that last thought in a moment, but a couple of lines that caught my eye. He said the march showed serious security problems in the country. He also said we wanted to hold accountable those who'd made mistakes during the special military operation. Well, on the first point, he probably is absolutely true that it did show serious security problems, the amount of acreage and miles they were actually able to march. But on that second point about holding those accountable, well, it doesn't look as if there have been any major moves at the top of the military command.
Well, it doesn't. Today we've seen two videos, one showing Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu visiting a Russian command center, and another video showing Vladimir Putin addressing a youth forum held in Russia. But the key question that remains unanswered is when exactly those videos were filmed. It's quite possible that they were filmed before Yevgeny Prigozhin's mutiny, and that's important because we still don't know whether Sergei Shoigu, the Russian defense minister, is still in his job and where Vladimir Putin is at this moment in time. And these are very important questions, given that Yevgeny Prigozhin's, one of his key objectives was to challenge the Russian defense minister's position and possibly remove him from his post.
Yes, interesting that in reference to that, he's talking about registering that protest, as he described it, the ineffectual conduct of this war, but not to overthrow the government. And yet, when you see how Vladimir Putin responded, calling it a betrayal, a treason, a mutiny, that's not how he saw it, not an attempt to overthrow the government. And now we have this confusion, as we are speaking now, about exactly whether there are still charges potentially or not, because that has been disputed, the notion that the charges have been dropped.
Yes, the Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, on Saturday, when he announced this deal reportedly brokered by the Belarusian leader, under which Yevgeny Prigozhin is to move to Belarus, part of the deal was the dropping of criminal charges of mutiny against Yevgeny Prigozhin. And today we've seen unsourced or reports quoting unnamed sources coming from Russia, which said that these charges have not been dropped yet. And there are two ways of reading these reports. One is that, well, it takes time for Russian bureaucracy to move, and then these charges will be dropped eventually. But the second way of looking at this is that there may be a possibility that Yevgeny Prigozhin will, at some point in the future, have to face Russian justice.
Vitaly, what's your take on the fact that this is an audio file, not anything in vision?
Well, of course, a lot of people would have liked to see Yevgeny Prigozhin in person and possibly, based on that, find out where he was. But on the other hand, this is how he prefers to communicate. Over the past few months, most of his statements published on social media, they did come in the form of audio messages, which seems to be his preferred way of communicating with the public at large.